Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Jobology podcast. I'm your host, Brandon. And before we get to my guest today, a couple quick reminders. Please make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. And please make sure you're following us on all social media platforms at Jobology Podcast. I really appreciate it, and it means a lot to us, and it helps us get out there to more people. My guest today, I've known since kindergarten. She is a Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and we will figure out exactly what that all entails. And she's going to tell us exactly what her day-to-day is and how she got to where she is. So without further ado, Lisa. First off, I just want to say thank you for being here, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And if you could give us kind of like your job title or what you would tell people that you do for a living.
Okay, so I specifically am a Board Certified Behavior Analyst. And I just got promoted to being a clinical manager. Basically, what I specifically do, there's a lot of things that you can do with being a BCBA. The cliche one that everyone thinks of is criminal minds. So there are a bunch of BCBAs, but it's not,
That's interesting.
they deal with forensics, but it's not in the context like they do on the show. What I do is very clinic-based and home-based, and I work in schools. All ABA is, so Applied Behavioral Analysis, which is the science that we use, is an evidence-based practice that helps typically children on the autism spectrum. So I work with a lot of children that have maladaptive behaviors. I work with increasing functional communication skills while decreasing problem behaviors. I could go into a bunch of different things that, I do, but a lot of it's just like helping with like daily living skills, language skills, making sure that kids are meeting developmental milestones. I mean, ABA is so wonderful because it goes into so many things, but the ultimate goal is just to have, for what I do, is to have kids be as independent as possible.
Okay. I get that. It's kind of on the this may seem maybe too broad of a description, but does therapist fit that title
Yes.
sort of?
So it is
Okay.
a type of therapy. So I do have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And so you can either get a master's degree for what I do in psychology, or you can get it in special education. So it's a combination of both. So it's kind of like, think of if a teacher and a therapist, combined their jobs together. That's essentially what my job is.
So you personally, when you're first kind of getting introduced into this field, how does that come about in like college, high school? Is that something like a passion that's been yours, lifelong passion? How does that come about for you personally?
I actually found out about it by accident. I was about 8 years old, and I had a cousin who kept, I think he was about a year old. He kept rocking back and forth on his knees. And I was like, that's not typically what babies do. That's a little different. And I was just really, really fascinated by it. And, he had language delays and a bunch of other things. And then I noticed that, there were people coming in and out of the house, and, they were doing a lot of like play-based therapy. They were doing a lot of things to help him with like potty training and language. And, he engaged in what's called stereotypies. So it's, there's a bunch of different functions, but, the primary one is typically automatic reinforcement. So, you'll have a kid that's flapping their hands because they really, really like to do it. And typically, sorry, I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but typically, adults and kids and neurotypical, neurodivergent, anybody, goes and does this thing called stereotypy. Like, you may be tapping your pencil, you may be doing whatever. The way that he was doing it was non-functional, and it was getting to a point where he could do it all day for hours. So they had, the therapist team come in there and work on that. And so I thought, that looked really, really fascinating. And so I just over time was like, I think I want to do something in the field of psychology. When I first started off, I foolishly decided I wanted to be a nurse, and I immediately changed it. Hated anatomy and physiology, and I really liked the neuro section. It is so hard. I hated labs.
I'm always curious as to how people can do stuff in medical field. Like I'm a big believer in like blood stays inside my body. It doesn't need to be outside. I don't want to see it outside. So as soon as like when people are like, yeah, I like cutting people open, I like that, I just I don't get it.
No, no, I can't. Like my mom's a burn special care nurse, and you know, I commend her for doing that, but like I can't do that. So then I realized that, and so I was like, okay, psychology it is for me.
Okay, so I've quick little backstory here. I've known Lisa since we were in grade school. But is that something that like piqued your interest in high school and then you went when you were choosing college, that was something you were like, I'm gonna choose a college based on that specialty, or was that something you found like in college when you were doing school?
I think it's yeah, it's something that slowly developed over time. So I always had
Mm.
like an interest in it. But if we're gonna go back into like, you know, elementary school, middle school, like what you know you wanted to be when you grew up,
Yeah,
I think I would have chosen being a veterinarian.
interesting.
Yeah, but I always that was always in the background of my mind, and I'm like, and I think it was just a progression of different things. Like I took a class in high school that was psychology, and I really liked the teacher, and she really like encouraged me as a person to, you know, consider that field just because, you know, she said I was very empathetic and whatnot. So, um, yeah, that was always there was a bunch of different factors that kind of led up to that. You know, one of them I hated my anatomy and physiology class. Another one
Okay.
was, you know, talking to her, talking to other going back to my mom, she knew some psychologists too, and they were like, "Well, you have like that mindset. You're very analytical. I can't.
Mm.
It's not that you know I can't memorize facts, but I'm. Let's be honest. I find that boring,
Same.
and I like being on my toes. I like constantly thinking and being quick with that. So, yeah, being in the medical field, I honestly I felt like was kind of boring in that regard.
Gotcha. How does one get into becoming a BCBA, a behavioral or a board certified behavioral analyst?
So you have to the way that I did it, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. The way that I specifically did it was I had a bachelor's degree in psychology. And you can also get one in special education. And, you know, that's fine. But then you need to get a master's degree in, mine was kind of weird because I did mine at San Diego State University. Um, it was something like non-teaching special education, whatever, autism studies. It had all of the BCBA coursework curriculum actually embedded in it.
Okay.
So all I had to do was do full time, you know, my master's program for 2 years, do 1,500 clinical hour work, whatever, pass my board exam, and then ta-da, I'm a, you know, a BCBA.
Okay. So then now, okay. So you have your board certified behavioral analyst, and so you now once you have that, is that kind of like having your degree in other fields where then you're like, okay, now I got to find a job that fits what I'm trying to do, or is it where you finish and there's like job opportunities widely available where you're like, oh, cool, I can go right now, ready to go.
So with your clinical hours, you're typically going to be working at a company already.
Mhm.
So you would probably, and for most programs too, they want you to have like some kind of experience with ABA. So, you know, if anybody is, you know, truly interested in it, you know, joining a company, the first company that I ever worked at, you know, told me all the steps in order to, you know, become a BCBA. And I also did get my clinical hours under them too. So usually you start off at an ABA company anyway.
Okay, and that's something that you.
Sorry, so for San Diego State specifically, I was like, I had to like think about it. Like, how did I get to that point? Okay. So for San Diego State specifically, in my bachelor's program, they had like internship classes, which I thought was pretty neat. And so they had you kind of just like said like what you were interested with psychology, and so one of the things was like ABA companies. So I ended up being like an intern, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, I want to work here instead of like I'm doing this for a class. Like I actually wanted to work there. But you can easily find it like if you search Indeed, there's companies all the time. It's such a growing field. Um, that, yeah, you can find it pretty much anywhere.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense. So then you join as an intern, correct? That's what.
Mhm.
Okay, so you join as an intern, and then is that like an internship where it's like you have a X amount of years? We got you on for a year, 2 years, whatever, or is it like you're
No,
an
no,
intern?
no, it's not a contractual
Okay.
internship. So that no, that was just for a class. And honestly, I would never, ever, ever encourage anybody to sign a contract for an internship or anything like that, because you don't want to be locked down, because you might end up, hating the company and then you owe them something.
Right.
So yeah, definitely don't go that route if you can at all possible. I know there's some that like, pay for your college, and that's great, especially, if you don't want to take out student loans and you need that financial support, definitely take that route. But if you can avoid it, it's best not to do that, and just try to, do a different route. But no, I wasn't under a contract. It was just like, hey, do you want to, get some experience and see if you like this certain, specialty in psychology.
Okay.
And then if you didn't, that was fine. You could just leave and say like, I absolutely hate this. I want to go back to school. Maybe, be something else. Like,
Right.
yeah, that's what that
That makes
was.
sense. Okay. Okay. So then, as you're doing that, how long before you? I mean, I guess I don't know what the right terminology is into when you would, like, for lack of a better term, graduate into from intern into therapist into analyst into
Oh, okay. So like the
you
whole
know
progression.
yeah, just kind of how that works, where where you start, where you go.
Typical 4-year college, doing your bachelor's degree, and for my sake, it was psychology. Um, and then you would do 2 years of a master's program. Ideally, you would have your courses embedded in there. If you don't, and you're doing a separate program and then you're doing it, typically that'll take 3 years. So you'll do 2 years of your, master's program, and then you'll do like another year of the BCBA coursework. Um, During that time, once you start your first graduate class, then you start collecting your clinical hours, and you need 1,500. So you're learning how to do like treatment plans, you're learning how to work directly with clients, you're doing assessments, you're doing parent trainings, alongside, other BCBAs, and they're guiding you how to do all of this. And then once you have the 1,500 hours, you submit it to the board. They say okay, or this is awful, you need to redo this, or whatever it
Okay.
may be. Um,
That would be
yeah,
disappointing.
one of my
Sure. That would be
one of my
disappointing.
technicians, I feel so bad for her. She submitted everything. She's like, "Yes, I got it. I finally did it." And they were like, "Nope, just kidding. You need 300 more hours." And
Oh,
so, yeah, it was
it's like a gut punch.
it
Oh.
was awful. She was ready to take the exam, and it's pricey. Like, it's all the study materials and the exam itself. It's not cheap. So,
Okay,
uh,
so that's actually interesting. So this is all out of pocket for you then. So
yes.
after you've got your master's, once you start, okay, I'm gonna start my 1,500 hours. That's
Yep.
out of pocket for you. You have to pay for that yourself.
But you can pay for it.
Okay.
But sorry, I know that's like so confusing. So there's a bunch of different routes. I feel like it's just like, what is it? Like a web of like different things.
Of course, of course.
So like you could go down the route that I did. So I already worked at a
Yeah.
company. I got those hours for free.
Okay. How would you go about getting your hours for free?
I just was like, "Hey, I want to be a BCBA," and they're like, "Okay, cool. We'll sign off on your supervision forms." And so somebody, a bunch of the BCBAs that worked there were just guiding you and making sure they're signing off on your hours. And you're
Okay.
doing like assessments with them and a bunch of other things like writing treatment plans
Oh wow.
um,
Okay.
with their guidance.
Yeah.
There are um, there are BCBAs. I have never met one, but I've heard that this is a thing, where you can pay somebody to sign off on those hours.
No.
Um, yeah, I would
Gotcha.
no, it's really, really expensive. Don't go that route. And then there's
Mm-mm.
also the third one too, where you can um, have you're signed under that contract. So you're still working for the company like I did. I don't know if this is making any sense. Sorry, no, it's like super complicated.
A little bit, but I'm trying to follow.
you're working for the company and you want them to pay for your grad program, that's where you would sign that contract. So that goes back into what you were talking about.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then you would have to work for them for 2 years. And I don't recommend that at all.
Yeah, that seems kind of like you're in a stuck situation potentially, based on just like a first impression.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So you do your 1,500 hours, then you submit to the board. The
Mhm.
board says the board says yes. We're not gonna say the
Yeah.
board says no. We're gonna say
Yeah.
board says yes. Then do you get like a certificate? Do you get like a diploma? Do you get like
You
a
have to sit for a board exam. I hated
okay?
that. I'm not gonna lie. And for anybody that actually does listen to this and wants to be a
Mhm,
BCBA, know that
mhm,
and I feel like this is with like any, healthcare profession when you sit down for a board. If you don't pass your first time, that is totally fine. It does not mean that, you're incompetent or anything like that. I just genuinely suck at taking tests. um,
yeah, yeah, same.
like I overthink. I'm an
Mhm,
overthinker. So it's not like I couldn't do it. But anyway, sorry. Going back to it. You sit for that board exam and then you wait for your test results. It takes like a month to get it back. And then you either pass or fail. And if you pass, then you can and this is where it gets tricky again, and I apologize. Some states will, you just have your BCBA. California is one of them, where
mhm,
you just have your BCBA and then, degree and all of that lovely stuff, and you can start working.
mhm.
And then there's other states, I believe Florida might be one, Maryland's one, maybe Indiana, a couple states, and more states are getting to this where you have to get a licensure on top of that too.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's honestly ridiculous. All you have to do is just pay like $150.
Somebody's got to make some money.
Basically, they're just making money off of you, so you can have like a
Gotcha.
license attached to it. It's
Yeah.
nothing, crazy. Um, but usually in those states, you do get paid more.
Okay. That's good. Speaking of pay, one of the questions that I kind of like to ask, not to get to I don't want, if you want to talk about what you specifically make, that's cool. But if you can give me a range of like, hey, here's what you can expect from like a low end to like a high end, or here's like an
Yeah.
average, whatever,
Um,
just so people have an idea.
you can make really, really good money. And especially the higher up you go with that job. So like
Hmm.
you're not just stuck at like your BCBA is that's it. Like
Hmm.
I started off as just a BCBA, that's it. And then I got promoted to clinical manager.
Hmm.
Um, so the more and more you go up and like you could be like an owner of the own company or you
Okay.
could be VP, whatever, and you still are a BCBA, but you're just moving up in the ranks. So starting typically is like 75,000
Mhm.
and it goes all the way up into I've seen like $150,000 a year.
Okay. Okay. So looking at from that, that's a pretty good range of like, will give people an idea of like, all right, if you're gonna take the time to go through school to do 1,500 hours to, it could be worth it, if you're willing to work for it in the end, kind of thing.
Exactly. And you can make good money and
Nice.
you're not just stuck like I was actually just talking to my husband. Sorry, total random side note.
Yeah.
You know, he works for the state. And so, sometimes, they get locked into like a certain like, pay grade and whatever.
Hmm.
And the upward mobility is not so rapid, but
Right.
with a field like, with being a BCBA, it's such a growing field
Mhm.
that you could easily, go up and up and up.
Okay. Awesome. So after you get your 1,500 hours, you do your exam. Oh, is it like multiple choice, true and false, essay questions? What's the exam like?
So it is multiple choice,
Mhm.
and a lot of questions are choose the best answer. And
Okay.
so there's like a lot of trick questions in there. It's a 4 hour long exam. And I think half of the battle with that exam is having the mental stamina to do a 4 hour long exam.
Just get
Because,
through it.
yeah, exactly. So, like, the
Mhm.
first time I did it, I was cocky about it. I was like, oh, yeah, I know my stuff. I can do it. I sat down for it. Halfway through that exam, I was like, I don't even know what I'm reading.
It's just I can't. Yeah, like retention. Yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I was
that
like,
makes sense.
I no. Like it was
Hmm.
just like blurry. I didn't know what I was reading. I was like, I'm tapped out and I know I failed. Um, and so part of it is like really, really building that mental stamina. So like you can know your stuff, but like make sure that you're able to have that stamina to do it. And then once I like figured that out, then I passed it and I did
Like
just fine.
it's like beating the test as opposed to like actually doing the information sometimes, where it's like you just gotta have the fortitude to get through it and know like, okay,
Yes,
just
and honestly, that's a good way of looking at it too. I hate saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Just because you pass your boards doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna be the best BCBA ever, because you could be the best one or you could be the worst one. It really comes down to your experience, um, more than anything.
yeah,
And that's something that is actually a fault of the exam is that it doesn't really test whether or not you're going to be a good BCBA or not. It just tests whether or not you can recite
ret-
information off the
yeah,
top.
retain information. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I've always said like, I mean, I'm a believer in that, just be not saying that, if you get good grades, you're not smart, but just because you get good grades doesn't make you necessarily smart. It makes you able to recite information and remember
that's,
information most of the time.
yeah. And I feel like growing up until probably eighth grade, I did really well in school. And then it was high school, because I went to a college prep school. I did horrible. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh my God, if I'm doing horrible now, I'm going to do horrible in college and a bunch of other things. College was so easy. I did not even really study. And
Same.
I was getting really good grades. And then grad school came along and it was like, it wasn't like, okay, here, recite a bunch of facts. It's like, okay, be analytical. You know this stuff. What are you
How
going
do
to do with
you,
it?
yeah, how do you
You
apply it?
use it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I did really, really well with it. And that's just how my brain works. So for me to sit down for a test and do like multiple choice answers and choose the best answer, my brain did not think that way.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. I mean, sometimes I feel like I can do good on those. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'd rather just write this out and do an essay
Yes.
style.
Yes.
It just depends how I'm feeling that day most of the time. But all right, so after you take your exam's done, passed, then you get your certification. In some states, you get your license,
Mhm.
and then you're ready to rock and roll and start working. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will say one thing, that transition from being, because I started off, as a technician right before I was a BCBA, and that's where I was getting my hours too. But that transition from being a technician to being a BCBA is such a huge transition too. So
Hmm.
for anybody that is actually into this field and wants to be a BCBA, um, it's a scary transition. The first couple 3 months, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this field just because
Hmm.
there's so much like parents are relying on you, the children are relying on you, you know,
Yeah.
your technicians are relying on you, other staff are relying on you. You're like, it's very, very overwhelming. Um, but everybody feels like that, so it's not just like it's one person or another, it's
Right.
literally everybody. And it's okay that like you don't know everything, because nobody knows everything, but it's like finding the way to ask for help and seeking those answers,
That makes
and then you'll
sense.
get to the groove of it. I mean, I obviously did.
Yeah. Hey, that's all. I mean, that's kind of how I feel like a lot of jobs go. I mean, I've had mostly what I would consider jobs as opposed to careers. And most of my jobs I feel like have gone that way where it's like, I kind of started there not knowing exactly what I was supposed to be doing, kind of, having an idea, but then kind of actually figuring out like, oh, this is how we do this every day, kind of day to
Yeah.
day thing. This is how this goes. Um,
And then it's just like second nature, and then you could just do it in your sleep.
exactly. And like that's sometimes I have done it in my sleep where I've literally dreamt about doing jobs. That's the worst. But side note. And so after you do the test, after you or like we said, you're board certified, good to go. Um, and it's like you said, you're kind of looking for jobs online mostly, or is it like word of mouth, or is it, you know, hey, I went to this school, I'm an alumni, hire me, kind of what,
It's a
how does that usually
combination. Honestly, it's a
Mhm.
combination. The current company that I work for, I found them, I believe, on Indeed, because I mean, I knew what I was looking for, so I just kind of did like a quick, I think I just did like a quick Google search of like ABA companies in my area.
Mhm.
And so, because I work with clients primarily in their home right now, I wanted like ones that were like generally close to my area. So I'm not like commuting an hour and a half or something
Mhm.
ridiculous like that to, go to work. That's awful.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I just did a Google search and then companies popped up and I was like, and I read the reviews. I always recommend for people that are just like in any field whatsoever, research your company that you're applying to
Okay.
beforehand, because it might completely suck and it might be super corporate and it might be, they don't pay very well or they treat their staff very well. And so that's really, really important that, going into it, the pros and cons. And if those pros and cons match, what you're looking for. No
Gotcha.
company is perfect, but you want to find at least something that you're looking for. Um,
Gotcha. So then, I guess that's kind of one of my other questions was like, is it so? Okay, so you're working for a specific company, then not necessarily. I was thinking more of like an independent contractor, kind of. I guess in my head
and
of
so that's what
yeah.
it's so complicated. You can be an independent contractor, you can work in a clinic, you can work in a school, you can work in home, you can work, actually, you can travel too. So, one of the things I regret not doing is traveling to places like, where was it? I can't remember the country in Africa, but I really, really wanted to go
Oh
there.
wow,
Um,
like foreign help.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
oh
exactly.
nice,
Yeah. So
that's
you would,
cool.
so like children that are, are on the autism spectrum or having maladaptive behaviors or, or special needs and just really, need to work on more independent skills. They will, there's opportunities to go travel internationally. And one of my supervisors actually is currently working in the Virgin Islands and she loves it.
Nice.
And so I'll see like posts of like her on the beach and it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
that's gotta be. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's
yeah,
not too bad.
no,
That sounds really fun.
yeah,
All right. Yeah, that would be something kind of like. I mean, I would compare it to like study abroad, but clearly it's like work abroad.
yeah, it's not, yeah, exactly. It's like studying abroad, but
Mhm.
like working abroad. So like, there's a bunch of opportunities like that. I mean,
Nice.
I feel like with having a family, that's probably not the smartest idea.
Eh, I mean, maybe once like kids are grown, you know what I mean, in like that later phase of like retirement, you could do like a
True.
independent contractor foreign aid kind of deal. That would be interesting.
True. I like your thinking. Yes.
Yeah, something like that. So once you pick a company, you apply, they hire you, you're going. Um, what is like? I would say like a typical average day to day. Maybe not right when you're like first day on the job, but like once you've kind of got the swing of things. I mean, what is like a literal typical average day to day? I mean, are you going into an office? Are you? I mean, I know you
I'm
said you
actually
do.
doing everything through telehealth right now.
Okay.
So that's kind of the BCBAs right now have the luxury of doing telehealth, which is really
Mm-hmm.
nice because, I am a new mom. Um, but I schedule things like parent trainings.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, total side note.
No, you're
I
good.
love the fact that my job has flexibility. So I
Yeah.
can schedule whenever I want, wherever I want, and I can bill for that.
Okay.
So I am currently doing everything right now on telehealth. And I will schedule like parent training meetings. So I'll tell parents how to do like behavior strategies and treatment plan goals for developmental milestones. I will, do supervision meetings. So I'll train my behavior technicians like, hey, like, let's do this one language intervention, or let's do, I'm going to go talk about ABA terms, but um, do a behavior extinction procedure and be careful about like extinction bursts and stuff like that. This is what it's going to look like. Um, so things like that. And then I'll also do something called program development. So like that's where I go in and, write up the treatment plans after I do like assessments and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And frankly, I really, really like it because half of what I do now, especially as a clinical manager, is half paperwork and half working directly with clients. So
Okay.
I have a lot of freedom and flexibility.
Nice. What's like a typical start time for you on an average day?
That's the thing I like about my job.
See,
I
that's what people want to know. People want to know what the perks are.
Yes, the perks are I get to pretty much sleep in whenever I want. I set
Mhm.
my own schedule and obviously, to an extent too. Let me put that out there. So
Sure.
I will put out my,
Yeah, you
it's
still
not
have to have a
like,
job and you still have to
yeah,
work. Like this
yes,
isn't a yeah.
right. But most days I sleep in until 9 o'clock in the morning. I just
Mhm.
casually make my coffee. I'll, play with my son in the morning, put him down for a nap, and then I start my day.
Okay.
Um, I and then, but it really is dependent on when the client is working with the behavior technician,
Okay.
um, and what your availability is too. So if you work for a company, you submit your availability and say like, okay, I can work um, Sunday through Saturday, which is currently mine. And the reason I do that is just because I am a mom.
Isn't that every single day?
Yes, but okay, that's just me. I'm not trying to scare anybody off.
I'm like,
Most,
wait, hold on, wait. It's Sunday through I was like Saturday. Is there a new day in the
no,
week
but
that
it's
I
only like
missed?
2 hours. Like I'll just talk to a client and be like,
Okay.
okay, bye.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
not just like I'm doing like an 8 to 10 hour day or something like that on the weekend. It's just um the reason I do that is just because I'm trying to be nice to my family. Is like I understand they have really busy lives, and so
Right.
setting up like a parent training meeting at like 7 o'clock at night when everyone's done with work and the kids are home from school, and that's just way too much.
Yeah.
So I'll schedule a meeting here or there, on
Mhm.
Saturday or Sunday. But again, that is just a me thing. That is not like
It's not
you
a
don't
requirement.
it's
Okay.
not a requirement. You
Okay.
can
Well,
set up your schedule, typical Monday through Friday,
I didn't want my guests turning off the phone or turning
no,
off
no,
the,
no, no, no,
podcast right away. I'm like, oh, well, that's the end of that. I'm not doing
no,
that
no,
job.
no,
Click.
no, nope, nope, nope. I promise. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I was like,
Okay.
right when I was like saying that, I was like,
Scared me.
yeah, it's gonna scare people.
Yeah.
No, you could do Monday through Friday, like 9 to 5, if you wanted to do that. It's really dependent on, what your schedule is. But I know myself. I like to sleep in. I really,
Mhm.
really value my sleep. I like to get, 10 hours of sleep a night.
Nice.
Um, I'm
Same.
I'm a very lazy person in the morning, and I know that about myself. And that's the thing I
Same.
like about my job. It's just like I can, slowly wake up, enjoy my mornings, enjoy playing with my son, and then start my day. And if I want to work, and this is just me, if I want to work until 7 o'clock at night, I'll work until 7 o'clock at night, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I like that flexibility, especially with being a new parent and everything else. It's just there are a lot of luxuries. I was thinking
Yeah.
of the word.
Well, I think what people should take from that is the more of the flexibility, not so much the, you working 7 days a week, is that that's because of the job gives you flexibility to
Yes.
choose that. It's
Yes,
not saying,
exactly.
you have to do this. It's saying you make your schedule. If that's what's comfortable for you and that's what you like, then go for it. And if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I would love a job that would let me do my own schedule and kind of, then maybe that's something to look into, something to think about.
And that was a huge selling point. So going back into like,
Yeah,
the beginning
getting
question,
into it.
that was a huge
Hmm.
selling point in my job. I was like, I knew I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have my own family. And I liked the fact that, I can have that job flexibility. So I can spend time with, my child and, I can be there. I don't have to just like drop them off at the daycare and call it a day. I can actually be present.
Right. Okay, so we're up, the sun is asleep, day's about to start. It's with the new telemed stuff. I'm sure it's more like, oh, you log in. Is there like a to-do list for the day? Is that something that you already kind of know? Like, I've got to meet with, patient A, patient B, or person A, person B, or whatever. Is it more of like a let me go on and see what's happening today, and now I got to figure out a plan, or do you kind of go in with a plan?
Combo. So my clients have their own set schedule that they work with a behavior technician. And so I can say like, oh, okay, well, little Johnny is working with Miss Susie. I'm just making up really random
Sure,
names.
sure, sure. Of course.
Little Johnny is working with, the technician, Miss
Mhm.
Susie, from 10 to 3, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so I'm like, okay, the client is allowed so many hours of certain billable things on my end, which I can
Okay.
go into that, but that's going to probably bore people.
No, you're
Um,
good. Yes. Just the gist is that
but like
there's
I could say like,
yeah.
I'm gonna look at my schedule. Yeah, Wednesday looks like a good day. I'm gonna schedule Wednesday. Or like with another client, they have a session from like 4 to 7. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna do Tuesday. Tuesday is, best in my schedule. And so it goes back into that job flexibility. I know what their schedule is. I know when they're working with the technician, but then I can go in there and say, like, okay, this is what works best for my schedule.
I got that. Okay, that makes sense to me. What is the relationship between you and the technician? Are you guys like part of the same company? Are they a
Yes.
different company? Are they
So the
okay?
whole hierarchy of what the ABA company world looks like is at the very bottom, you have your behavior technicians. And then above that, you either have the board certified assistant behavior analyst, which they're kind of fading that out. And then you have your BCBA,
Okay.
and then you have some other people in upper management, which I am one of them. And then you have like the CEO.
So let me see if I can if I've got this straight. You start out as technician.
Yes,
So you're the one going doing these things, and
yes,
then a board certified behavioral analyst is meeting with you, being like, okay, hey, this is your schedule. Cool, I'm gonna get in on these. And then after that, you move on to becoming the BCBA,
mhm,
and then you're kind of working with the technician, going, all right, I'll help you out. Boom, boom, boom.
yep,
And then from there, now we're at where you currently are, which is a management position.
yeah. So I'm like training like all the other BCBAs and then the technicians and making sure everything's running smoothly. So
Okay. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then is that something you see yourself personally doing long term? Is that something where you're like, okay, this is my stepping stone?
I kind of want to see. My boss actually asked me that the other day.
Oh no, I don't want to be your boss. I don't
No,
want to
no,
be your
no, it's
boss.
totally
I'm
fine.
just trying to have fun.
No, I like it's such an awkward question because like I don't have a straight answer and mine, like I'm really ambitious and I'm just like, I'm gonna see how far I can go. I don't know where that is, but I just want to keep running.
Gotcha. If you were to like take a next step, what could that possibly be?
Maybe like vice president, or I could be a
Okay.
clinical director, or I mean, I don't want to just
Mhm.
because I really, really like the environment that I work in right now. I could create my own company and I
Yeah.
could be, the CEO of that. And
Okay.
I don't want to do that just because, there's the nitty gritty stuff of like dealing with directly with insurance. And
Actually running a business. Yeah.
yeah, I actually like
Yeah.
running a business and I'm like, I know that's
Yeah.
not
I
me.
don't I mean, this podcast thing, I mean, we'll see if it ever becomes a business type of thing.
Yeah,
Hopefully that's but I don't that's like the thing I'm least looking forward to is business side of stuff. I just want to have fun talking to people.
yes.
Uh
And that's what I like too. Exactly. I like
yeah.
interacting with people and I like, getting to know people and helping people. But, do I want to work with insurance? No. I mean, I
Oof.
do to a point, and then that's the point where I feel comfortable. And
Yeah.
then it's like,
Or
that's,
like yeah, or getting a the lease on the building of the place you got to rent and
yes,
yeah,
yes,
ugh, like no, I don't
no,
want to deal with any of
no,
that. No.
I don't
No,
do
no,
that.
no. Okay. And then after after lunch, we check in with who we have to check in with. Um, is it like, I would say, like, at the end of the day, is that when you have to like start writing reports? Is there, is that when paperwork comes in, or is that
Pretty much
throughout the day?
it's throughout the day. So like, what I was saying like before, like, you may work with a client from on Tuesday from like 4 to 7, and then another client, oh gosh, what was the other one? It was like 10 to 3 or something on that Wednesday. And then like all the time in between, then you're like, I feel like doing paperwork today. Okay, I'm going to do so and so's treatment plan. I know it's due. It's kind of like, it's almost like college. You're like, okay, I know that I have a due date of an assignment and it's due such and such date. Okay, I'm going to plan to do it this day. And so, and then but you get paid for it. So it's kind of like, it feels like you're in grad school all over again, but you get paid to be in grad school.
Gotcha. Well, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. And then because of schedule flexibility, I mean your days kind of end when you decide they end, or you've scheduled them out to end. What I know you said mentioned 7 o'clock earlier. Is that when you typically like to try and end, or are you like, I'm gonna try and be done by 5, try and be done by 4? What are you personally typically looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it really, this is going to sound weird, but from a family perspective, I just base it off of, whatever, my husband's schedule is too. Like,
Mhm.
I know if he's had like a 12-hour day, then I'm like, okay, maybe like not, working till 7 is probably not a good idea because, somebody has to put little guy down and whole,
That
entire
makes
thing.
sense.
Um, yeah, it really, really depends. It depends on your availability. It depends on when you want to do it. If you want to take clients that late, I don't mind it. And I like just kind of working here and there. I don't like working. I know some people can do it like the 12-hour shifts and whatever. I don't. I want to like be able to just go have lunch at my leisure whenever and not have to, feel like I'm being rushed, or I want to like leisurely wake up in the morning, or um whatever it may be, or like work around my husband's schedule because I know he's working a 12-hour shift. So I feel like that's a it depends question.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's that makes sense though. I mean, obviously having a job with flexibility is going to allow you the flexibility and make it a little hard to be like, oh yeah, I end every day at this day. Well, no,
Yeah.
the reason I took this job is because I can end whenever I so choose. So it's all
Exactly.
different.
And that's no, and I
Yeah,
love that.
that
Like
makes
I can't
sense. That makes
like,
sense.
people are like, oh my gosh, you work on Saturday and Sundays. And I'm just like, I like that. Like there's other
Hmm.
perks to it. It's not just like I'm working the full day on Saturday and Sunday. It's like maybe I work a couple hours here and there, but do you get to sleep in until 9 o'clock in the morning? Probably not.
I mean, I do, but other
Oh,
people might
okay. Well, that's
not. But yes, most people know. I guess so now, I mean, now that we kind of know what's an average day to day, I mean, it almost seems like there is no necessarily average day, that it is kind of just like, every day could be a little different. Every day could
I
be
mean,
a
I'll have
little.
like monthly meetings like as
Mhm.
a team, but for the most part, no. There's no
Yeah.
like set schedule. There's no average day. Just as long as you're doing your treatment plans when they're due, doing your parent trainings, supervising your technicians and making sure
Mhm.
they feel supported, and doing any additional paperwork like making therapy materials. There's really not much to it.
Gotcha. Until you come up with the new, invention, the new learning tool that, you create, or the game that you create that's the new hot thing, and then you market that and sell that, and then there you go.
Actually, side note,
See?
going into like being ambitious and everything like that, I'm actually trying to create my own social skills program, and
Nice.
actually early learners program. So we're trying to make our clinic setting into more of like a preschool.
Nice.
So I, being ambitious, I have no idea why I'm like this, but I guess go me, whatever. I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
I want to do that. I want to make the own preschool and do this and that. And, it's going to
No.
be so fun. And yeah, I'm going to help out with
Do
that.
like a
So,
curriculum and stuff. That's awesome.
yep.
So I have usually in this part of the interview or podcast or whatever you want to call it, I this is where I kind of have my own questions specific to the job. There's
Mhm,
only a couple things that I was curious about that I didn't think we would touch on during our regular interview. So I was
mhm.
curious to know if there was like a mentor, or maybe even like like a famous therapist, or I don't maybe analysis analyst that you would be like, for me personally, if I wanted people to learn more about my job or my, I don't want to say beliefs necessarily, but your kind of like background, who would you point them to, or who would you be like, oh, go read something about what they've written? That's kind of interesting. Or
Oh, I feel like I'm the worst person for this
oh no,
question. I feel like, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I can pinpoint it and it's this
yeah,
person. And like, I really think it's just a bunch of different people along the way that just nurtured me to be who I am.
hmm
From people, psychologists that my mom would work with, and I got to sit down and talk with them about it. I got to see the BCBAs, help my cousin. I got to, work as a technician, and, there's the BCBAs there, and, um, they're supervising me, and like I'm learning from them. And then I'm, my advisor in graduate school. And it's just, I feel like it's just a bunch of different people, and just like listening to them and how far they've come and how inspiring that is. And, all their success stories too, that
yeah,
I think just collectively, um, yeah, I felt like that was really inspiring. So I can't just say one person. I just think like it's kind of like the community perspective. Like, we are, even though a lot of BCBAs are spaced all over the world, everybody's inspiring in, their own sense, because we have the end ultimate goal of, wanting to help children and families, be the best that they can be. And so that's what, drove me.
nice. Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Um, and then I guess my final kind of question or kind of thought to leave our viewers on, or for our listener, um, uh, what is there something that you would want people to know about your job, either that you feel like people might get wrong, or you feel like that people just don't know, or something that you would want people to be more aware of, just something to be like, to kind of, you know we've discussed all this, but as almost like a wrap up of like, hey,
I like this.
this is the takeaway.
Question. I like this question.
Yeah.
I've done 4 interviews so far this year about my job. Don't know how that happened, but anyway, like I had a high schooler interview me. I've had some other people interview me. And so I thought it was funny that you asked too. But
Yeah.
because people are like, well, what is a BCBA? I've never heard of
hmm
that. Like, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And so my biggest takeaway with everything, and this is just for any job whatsoever, please, 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 please ask for help. You know,
It's a
when
great
I
one.
was starting off, I thought I had to know everything. I was like, even as a technician, or, whatever level I was like, I have to know everything. And if I ask for help, then I'm going to look like I'm incompetent. And you're
hmm
not. You're absolutely not. The best thing that you can ever do is ask for help. Go seek out those people, like the people that I had that inspired me along the way. I eventually, got the confidence and courage to ask them for help, and I learned from them. And you
Right.
learn from a bunch of different people and their skill set, but you don't know unless you ask for help. And so don't be afraid. You're constantly always learning. And that's great. And that is honestly to be admired and not to be looked at as incompetence.
That's so funny. Something my mom would always say to me too is that most people want to help other people.
Yes,
Like, it's
exactly.
just inherent in human nature of like, oh, if I can help you, if I have the time, if I have the ability, like, and you need it, yeah, then yeah, of course I want to help you. If I can do it, it makes me feel good helping somebody. It makes them feel good, getting whatever they had accomplished. So yeah, I mean, I think that's awesome. Of like, don't be afraid to reach out. Like, nobody's gonna think you don't know what you're doing. Everybody was in your situation at one point. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. And I don't know why there's this social stigma that, you can't ask for help. Like that's
yeah.
just some taboo thing that if you ask for
Mhm.
help, like goes back into that you will seem incompetent. But you're right, your mom's right.
Yeah,
There's so many people that want to help, especially me. Like I think, some people at my company are like, oh my gosh, she's scary. She's a clinical manager. And I'm like, I'm really not. Like I'm just a human being, and
yeah,
ask me for help and I can guide you, whatever. And if I have to, spend time with you on a Saturday because I
yeah,
genuinely want to. It's not because I have to. Side
right.
note, I want to help you. I want to nurture you. I want you to feel confident in what you're doing, and you can be the best person that you can be.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the job field, I mean, this goes for other job field as well, but I mean, your job field specifically is you chose a job where you want to help people. So
Yes.
wanting to help your fellow coworkers as well, it doesn't
I'm
seem
like
that far
addicted
of a
to
jump.
helping
It's like,
people.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the jump. Like, that seems
Yes.
about right to me. Well, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on with me. Thank you for taking your time. Um, just like Lisa said, my podcast wouldn't be going without help. I've had to reach out and ask every single person that's been on for help
Awesome.
because I would have no guests without help. So
I can
this is
also
how it
help
has
you
to go.
with other guests too if you want.
There you go. Well, that would be awesome. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Lisa, for being my guest today. And thank you, viewer, for watching another episode of the Jobology podcast. Before we end today, a couple quick reminders. I know, again, please subscribe to us on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. And please follow us on all social media platforms at Jobology Podcast. It really helps us get into that algorithm, get to more people. It would be much appreciated. And like we always say to end every episode, make good choices.